Welcome in, Big Ten backers. It's another week of college football, but before we get started, we got some housekeeping. Vegas, the Eagle has landed back from the Bellagio. What's up, man? You got some words for us?
As always, I do. Let's get it going.
You read it again.
I'm going to, man. I'm getting into it. I like it now. The Big Ten backers want to clearly state that all aspects of our betting segment or any discussions around gambling are for entertainment purposes only. Betting should only take place in states where gambling has been legalized. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or utilize the local resources in your area. Most of these services are free of charge and available 24 hours a day. Please budget accordingly and stick to a strict plan when legally gambling. Do not chase losses by betting on games or props not originally part of your plan, and do not exceed pre-plan budgets. Thank you all and good luck.
Did you just say don't be an idiot?
That's paraphrasing, but yeah, pretty much.
All right, don't be an idiot, but listen to this. Our intro. Got some coach speak coming.
Let's go, Purdue sucks. But so does Michigan and Ohio State.
Love you, man. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world.
Who taught you how to fight? Who taught you how to be a warrior?
I hate playing against these guys. I hate playing them.
Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Like, I don't.
You better get me right now.
They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood.
We're in LA. It's us and USC.
We are at the top of the Big Ten Conference. I mean, we're at the top of any conference. I don't ever look at ourselves below anybody. We are
best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
Sure you get some of that NIL money that he's sharing with Dan Lanning, but sure you get...
There's some things going on that aren't right as well, so we'll talk about how to handle it.
Really, 2 or 3 beers or 4. I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Love you, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got the Hawkaholics here to do the wave with us. Here we go. And speaking of Hawkaholics and doing the wave, you guys are on Hawks Heaven right now, man.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on that, man.
Thanks,
hey,
brother.
Hawks Heaven, if you don't know, was the guy who implemented the wave along with help from one of his followers, right?
Yep.
You had him on the podcast. Cool-ass dude.
Yes, hell yeah.
Awesome as hell. Well, Big Ten Midwest CornFest game of the week. It's got to involve Iowa. It's got to involve Ohio State. So let's get into this. Here we go, son. Boom. All right. We talked about it a little bit last night on your show. So keys to the game. We'll start with you, Brad. What's going on in this game?
Possession, man. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. For me, there's so many different things for Iowa that go right, but one of the biggest thing is keeping Ohio State's offense off that field.
Yeah.
Getting rest.
Possession.
Yeah. Getting your defense rest, sustaining some drives, and putting some points on the board is a must for Iowa. They cannot do any of that. They don't stand a chance, no matter how good their defense is. We saw it 2 years ago. The first half of that game, the defense kept them in the game. Second half of the game, that was a whole different ball game, and we got ran straight out of there. So, I mean, to me, that's probably the biggest, man.
And speaking of defenses, it's going to be a defensive struggle. I mean, Iowa is only giving up 13.8 points per game. That's 15th in the nation, while Ohio State is first, 6.8 points per game. I know it's a little bit different in who they've faced so far. Iowa State is a good-ass team, and Iowa had some other, what was it, Arkansas State that was pretty decent? Was that Troy? It was Troy.
Troy,
yeah.
It
was pretty good offensively. Yeah.
Ross, or whatever.
Yeah. And then, last, 2 weeks ago, going against Minnesota was also kind of a game, and Minnesota's a decent team. I mean, at least defensively.
Yeah. I mean, they showed it last week against Michigan, man. They gave them all they could handle.
For sure. All right. Hey, Brandon, you got anything on this, Mr. Hawkaholic?
I pray to God. Yes, I pray to God that you guys are looking to head at Oregon. I really am. I hope that. Yes, go ahead, man.
And that's one of the other keys to the game. I mean, if you look ahead to a big game coming up next, that's obviously can change the mentality of the game real quick. But, I mean, Iowa's a big enough team. I don't think it's one that you can easily overlook. They're still 3-1, solid team. Like I said, 15th in points per game. Their defense is solid, right? They are 18th in yards per game, 272.8 yards per game they give up. Ohio State's second. Like I said, defensive battle, 196.5 yards per game Ohio State gives up. The turnover margin's also kind of close. Iowa's actually a little bit better on that, 1.25 turnover margin per game, meaning they get 1.25 turnovers compared to how many they would give up a game. Ohio State is 0.75, so get 3/4 of a turnover every game. Yeah,
I like it.
So that's a big plus for Iowa. Matt, you got anything on this big ass game?
You looking for some lines, or are you looking for some insight?
Some insight first. Let's save the lines till the end. Hey man, you're not still in Vegas. We don't need to be doing any lines.
I'm sorry. I get confused with zip code I'm in sometimes. I just kind of want to get your feel, just from an outsider's perspective. I look at the Troy game, and I'll say from a betting perspective, they're one of the worst teams in the FBS this year. Troy is. Also looking at Iowa State, just kind of the last few weeks, seeing a pretty good defense there, but not putting up a lot of offense. Iowa State is. So just kind of curious where you've seen Iowa in those two games. I know they lost to Iowa State and they won by 17 against Troy, but they were only up by 3 in the third quarter down at halftime. Just kind of wondering what were the stumbling blocks in those games, and how do you see them overcoming them with Ohio State?
The big plays.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always both of them big plays. We gave up big plays.
And we all talked about this last night too. The 60-yard catches from that dude from Troy. I mean, dude,
two.
That is where Ohio State can make a difference if they throw the ball up to Smith. Just the freshman All-American. I mean, he's not an All-American yet, but he will be, right? I mean,
for sure.
He could have a shot at the Heisman if he keeps up the numbers that he's doling out, man. I think he saves Will Howard a lot of times, because Will Howard's just like, I could chuck it wherever the hell I want. Throw that ball up.
That must be nice.
And you should. Yeah, you should, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, man. When you have a weapon like that, I mean, if that's what he's good at and you can trust your wide receiver to run the route,
told me,
it's huge.
This is a little bit inside information. He has a 95-yard catch radius.
Gee.
How they measure that? I just want to know.
Dude, he's just a freak. Andrew Anderson comes in Big Ten backers equals Big Ten bias. Well, hell yeah. You know what? We're going to talk about that bias a little bit later on. And Sports Bites podcast. Can Iowa beat a ranked team for the first time since 2021?
We talked about that last night.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about these big plays. So, obviously when we think of Iowa the last few years, an incredibly strong defense. Do you think this is a secondary issue that Iowa has, or do you just feel like a couple broken reads? Everybody gives up a 70-yard touchdown in a season. It happens. So kind of what's your feel around the secondary for Iowa?
Surprisingly, that's been the weakest spot, and we thought that was going to be one of the stronger spots. They returned 3 or 4 starters, preseason All-American.
Yeah.
And they've just given up big play after big play. And I think last night, what'd they give up? 3 total, and they had 3 already in the first 2 games of big plays. They gave up 3 in the entire season last year. So that's a big difference maker in a traditional Iowa defense.
And it's kind of a tale of 2 different styles on defense. They're giving up 200 yards passing per game, but 62 yards rushing per game. Interestingly enough, just behind Ohio State at 61.2 yards rushing per game. But again, some of these stats for Ohio State, you got to take with a grain of salt until they start getting into more of the conference competition, because it was cream puff city, baby, to start the season.
No doubt.
Oh yeah.
And you know what's hilarious about that is Michigan fans all over social medias are like, Ohio State doesn't play anyone. You can't say anything about them yet. And Michigan's schedule was softer than Sharman last year, and they were all fighting like it doesn't matter. We won the games big. So, man, what a bunch of wieners.
It's amazing how it flips.
I know the story flips, and it probably would for Ohio State fans too.
Oh, facts.
We'd like to change the story too. Just depends on who your blinders are for. But anyway, let's get back more into this game. Damn, it's gonna be fun watching Ohio State play someone with a pulse, right? And you're gonna know how this offense is. You're gonna know how this offense is once you get against Iowa, because obviously they have a good defense every year. Phil Parker knows how to call a defense, and he's got like the gumption, man. He's gonna go up and try to, win the game just with his defense alone. I mean, that's what he had to do the last few years, right?
Oh yeah, defense, and special teams, man. That's Iowa's bread and butter for the last, I feel like, 5 years. To be honest with you,
it has been.
So 69th in the nation in passing yards per game, but they have an offensive weapon this year. Caleb Johnson, man, going off. Is he going to go off against an NFL defense? He's second in the nation, 685 yards and 9 touchdowns, which is third in the nation. Dude had a game against Minnesota, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He'll definitely – yeah, what's up?
Go ahead.
He'll definitely get 100, at least 100 yards rushing this weekend.
Whoa.
I think he'll do it.
We're calling our shot, Vegas, Matt. We're calling our shot.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, Ohio State's run defense has been pretty soft. I think Marshall exposed a lot of that. So I wouldn't be horribly surprised by it, but
I don't know what you think soft is, but 62 yards per game, 61.2 yards per game is what they're averaging. Yeah.
Liz, you watch that Marshall game. They were running the ball in whatever hole they wanted to, that Marshall, in the first half. A couple turnovers. That was not a clean first half. And I'll take all the other games and throw them out the window. So I think a really competent Iowa offense that can run the ball effectively, I think that's the Achilles heel for Ohio State here.
It's like your favorite girlfriend. Pick any hole you want.
I mean,
facts.
You guys can touch that. I ain't touching that.
Beeb, you already talked about Iowa's passing attack being almost non-existent. That stat that aired on our show last night of loading the box on Caleb Johnson, and he averages 10 yards a carry when they load the box. That's insane.
Yeah.
He gets most of his runs on loaded boxes. Most of his yards. It's insane.
So offensively, Iowa's a little bit different than last year, right? They are 53rd, 32 points per game. Brian Ferentz would have a job this year. He would keep his job. All right. Total offense, they're 65th, 397.8 yards per game. They're almost breaking the 400 mark. I mean, that is a turnaround, right?
Yeah.
Anyone with me on that? That's a complete difference than last year. I know it's not like mind-blowing elite numbers, but hey, it's better than last year, so there was only one way to go, though.
Yeah, I mean, when you improve by 70 positions, that's a hell of a jump, man. That's
for sure.
It's a big jump.
I guess we need to start getting into the lines, man. The Vegas lines. Give it to us, Vegas. What we got?
Will do. So you saw the line start at -24 in favor of Ohio State. I think they've been listening to the Hawkaholics this week because that spread has dropped to -18 at most books. So you've seen a 6-point drop in that spread. Over under started at 44.5. It's only creeped up a little bit to 45. This is, that line is interesting just because I see a scenario, to your point, really tight first half going back and forth. The big plays, though, really scare me in that second half with that secondary. If they start letting a couple of those in, you could start seeing that backdoor cover, that 18-21 point win. However, I do think Iowa's run game is going to be a major factor in this game. Iowa scores points. We got to start getting off that Iowa under train. So to me here, because I don't like that 18, I'd be playing the over. And yes, I said over in an Iowa game. So how about you? Beav, I want to hear it.
Hey, man, keep it as is. I'm going under, baby.
Nah, dude. They don't hit the under anymore. Come on, you're not paying attention this year. They've been hitting the over.
Always hit that over?
They're hitting that over, man.
Yeah,
Every
well, still,
week.
I'm looking at the defensive stats. I'm going under still.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
you do what you want.
Receipts.
Caleb Johnson doesn't break the triple digits. He only has one rushing touchdown, and they're going under.
I do want to say Iowa this year, 4-0 on the over. They have been over in all 4 of their games with the line closing. So
what was it, 45?
Well, one was 35, I think. I don't know. I'd have to go back in the records. But, they're clearing it. Even it took Iowa State a last-second field goal to help them clear that over there, but they did it. So,
okay.
Does.
Hey, when you say that about Iowa, man, that says a lot. Let's put it that way.
Considering they were 1-11 last year, 1 over 11 unders, yeah, it is saying something.
I think that they, that is kind of – because I see Ohio State scoring about 30-some points, and they could get 10 to make it 45. Yeah, I'm going to stick with my under. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
You tried to talk me into it. I ain't falling for that juju.
It's fine. I'll take the W in the standings. Don't worry about it.
Do what you want to. All right, you boys got a pick. You going over, under? What are you taking?
Yeah.
Going over.
Over.
Points? Yeah. You don't even want to look at the points. Everyone's going over, huh?
Going over.
Over.
These defenses, man, they're going to be smacking heads. I'm telling you. Boys. Listen up. It's going under.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, you better believe it. All right. Any last words on what we think about this game? Anything? I know, Brandon, you were pretty negative yesterday.
Still am.
In fact, some people told you to shut up and get off the air.
Yeah, too negative.
God.
Too negative. Time to go, boy. All right, what do you think, man? What was your score prediction yesterday? 42-10?
42-10, yep. Ohio State.
That goes.
Wow.
That checks well
Sticking.
for over.
Sticking.
Damn. Man, I'm a little bit better. I'm going to 38-28 Ohio State.
Yeah.
Iowa keeps it decent.
I think it's closer to that one, man. I agree. I think 38-20 range, 24 range. I think Iowa puts up some points this week. I really do.
I'm going to go 31-13. Just gets to the under.
I hope Iowa kicks the last second field goal, and that's just to stick it through you.
Oh, man. Don't be playing with my money.
God.
Come on, man. I hope they miss it. It bounces off the uprights so I can stick it to you.
Nah.
We got good special teams.
Yeah, man. It's Iowa special teams, man. They knock it through. I ain't worried.
Good.
You guys are jinxing the shit out of yourselves, man.
Kicker this year, not the punter.
I'm not. I'm allowed to say they have good special teams. I'm not jinxing anything.
We don't mess with the team here anymore.
No.
Well, boys, we just wanted to get a good wrap up on this Midwest CornFest game of the week, and we're gonna let you go. We got more Big Ten to cover, and maybe another special guest coming on. So,
all right, guys.
Shout out Hawkaholics. Go check them out. Facebook, Twitter. X, whatever the hell you want to call it. You're on YouTube. They are always broadcast on our channel too. So check them out there. Check them out on their site. Man, Hawks Heaven. That place is legit. They're on there too. So
hell yeah, man.
These boys are doing big in their first season.
We're trying, baby. We're trying.
Right, let's do it.
They're done without you.
All right.
Later, gentlemen.
Right,
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hashtag, what was it? Hashtag punter.
Punting is winning?
No, it was the punt squad.
Punt squad. Hashtag punt squad. They had the punter from Iowa on, and it caused a bunch of drama. So.
No, we didn't.
It never happened.
Never happened.
Anyway, we'll see you, boys. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Later, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bon voyage. The enemy is gone. There we go. All right. Now we got to get back to some of the other Big Ten shows. All right, man. Well, before we get back to the Big Ten, we're going to cover the big-ass dump truck game of the week. Boom. All right, Minnesota, Missouri versus Texas A&M at A&M. So this is going to be a big show for Missouri. Missouri's struggled a little bit against a couple teams, barely squeaked one out against Boston College, barely got past Vanderbilt of all teams. Vanderbilt actually looks like a decent team this year. They're putting together a little bit of work, right?
Yeah. Be fun to see what they do against Bama this week. See if they're for real or not.
That's true. Number 9, Missouri at number 25, Texas A&M. We got a new quarterback for the Aggies because their boy went out. So freshman Marcel Reed, I think, will be back in. He's got 6 touchdowns, no interceptions on the year, 585 yards, and he's versatile. He can run, he can pass, and Colin Klein needs this for his offense, the dual threat quarterback. Both teams have been tested, like I said, A&M by Notre Dame and Missouri by Boston College. I think A&M had a little bit of a game with Arkansas too, and Missouri by Boston College and Vandy. Man, I feel like both these teams are overrated, and the more losses each of these teams can have on the season, the better it is for the Big Ten. Missouri, in my opinion, is kind of living off of last year, but I gotta root for Texas A&M because Missouri has that soft ass schedule. They're like the Rutgers of the SEC, so they don't really play much. Texas A&M has a defensive lineman, Nick Scorton. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. 3 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss on the season. All right, he's going to have to get after Brady Cook and Luther Burden because they can be a burden for this Aggies D. The Aggies D gives up 207 yards passing per game. Man, that is a pretty good amount of passing yards per game to give up. And Mike Elko, I got to root for him. Got to root for A&M. I need A&M to win this game. But I think A&M's overrated too. So, I don't see Missouri as a top 10 team. What do you think?
No, not at all. And this is the obligatory Texas A&M sneaks back into the top 25, so they play a ranked team versus a ranked team. I mean, this is the story of Texas A&M the last 15 years as their preseason ranked top 15. They lose pretty quickly. They fall out. They squeak back in to give an SEC team another ranked win, and they'll finish at 7-5. It's a tale as old as time with Texas A&M. Yeah, they're definitely a little bit overrated. However, I would say their offense was anemic against Notre Dame and early started the season, didn't have the quarterback situation filled out. I really like that transition and what they've done at the quarterback position going with Marcel, Marcel Reed. And I really think that's going to help them. That dual threat, I think, is a major factor in college football. And when you have it, it really helps you move the ball. And Boston College, I know, scuffled last week. Boston College didn't have Castellanos last week, so I do kind of want to say that 2-loss Boston College team, I do think they're going to be a pretty good bowl team this year. So I do think Missouri had that tough game. I think Vanderbilt's just one of those pesky teams nobody wants to play. I don't really know if they're going to be bowl eligible this year being in the SEC. But if that team was in the ACC or the Big 12, they would be up there, I think, this Vanderbilt team this year. So I do see some tough matchups there. However, any more insight, you just want to dive into the numbers?
Well, no, I want to go a little bit like this is where the SEC bias comes in because the SEC at the top, obviously those teams are good. The Georgias, the Alabamas, the Texases of the world. But the Missouris and the A&Ms, they're not that good. They lose, but because they're SEC, because they have a winning record or 1 loss as in Texas A&M, they're jumped up. They're automatically rated. Where you're not going to have a Rutgers, you're not going to have you do have an Illinois, which is good, that they have a loss and are still ranked, but you're not going to have a Nebraska being ranked. And I think that both those teams are on par with these 2 SEC teams.
You're just going to always get the benefit of the doubt in the SEC, where they're going to say that 7-5 team should be ranked versus the 9-3 Big 12 team or the 9-3 ACC team. They're always going to take that bias and schedule into account. And we saw this last week where I thought Ole Miss was incredibly overhyped. I don't believe in Lane Kiffin. I've said it multiple times on this podcast. What does he do? He goes out and loses to Kentucky. Kentucky's got a pretty good defense, but I heard about Ole Miss's offense and Lane Kiffin and all these things, and they lose at home to Kentucky. And you're going to see them stay in there, although I don't think that's a top team or a playoff team whatsoever. Oklahoma has done nothing this year to impress me. Auburn is a terrible football team, and Oklahoma barely survived there, but they keep getting ranked. You're just naturally going to see SEC teams completely overhyped and overranked. One, because they're in the SEC, and two, they want to make sure the Georgias, the Texas, the Alabamas stack up ranked wins on their schedule.
And ESPN basically gets to set the market, right? And Fox is doing a little bit to change the narrative, but they're just not doing enough. They don't have the staying power with ESPN because they don't have enough shows and they don't have enough writers, and they kind of drop the ball on Big Noon Kickoff, and I really don't like that. It's just inconsistent. Like, I want to watch Big Noon Kickoff, but guess what? They're an hour later every time they are on, and sometimes they're just, we're not doing it this week. And then when they do, they're like, can we do anything we can to go to anywhere where Colorado is?
Yeah.
And can we talk about that nonstop?
Well, they know
that's except Colorado people.
I mean, you got Joel Klatt, but you also just have the eyeballs of Dion, so they know. And they're smart. They'll go to Ohio State every chance they get, when Marshall as well. They're trying to get the eyeballs. But what you're missing is from Sunday through Friday, when any of us are tuning in for sports, we're going to ESPN First Take. We're going to the radio. We're going to those places. And very clearly, they're going to drive an SEC agenda. It makes sense. That's where their contract is.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of good teams in the SEC, right? I don't think this is incredibly overhyped. I mean, there's great football in the SEC. I think it's that middle of the pack that we've talked about with the Big Ten and the SEC, where I think the SEC is slightly better, but I definitely think there are teams that are ranked that shouldn't be. And that's where we really want to see the Big Ten elevate to these next few years. We're seeing it with Rutgers. We're seeing it with Nebraska. We're seeing it with Penn State. Get that middle of the pack really rising up. And I think that will help the Big Ten as a whole.
And the teams that they added out west will help too, because they're better names, right? And they can recruit. They can do a little bit better as far as financials, minus UCLA. Anyway. Yeah.
UCLA can be good. I mean, UCLA's put together some football teams. Obviously, it's a really great basketball program. So they're carrying the water for sure.
Man, we went down a rabbit hole.
No, bashing the SEC is never a rabbit hole.
That's true. All right, man, let's get on to the picks.
Yeah, so this one's been a little bit interesting where you saw Texas A&M start out the week at -4.5. That's dropped slightly to -2.5. Over-under stayed pretty consistent, start at 49, dropped just a little to 48. You're seeing about 73% of the cash flowing to Missouri at this time. Again, they are going on the road. I really think the difference here, again, is the quarterback play by Reed. I like dual threat quarterbacks in college football. I said this with Orgy, telling USC fans to be cautious. You have that dual threat quarterback. They keep that 3rd and 3. They keep the drive alive with the first down. They keep plays going. They keep their offense on the field, defense off. Because of that, I'm going to take the 2.5. Give me the Aggies. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And, stat-wise, it doesn't really back up. The turnover margin for Missouri, and they're 31st in the nation, 0.75, so they're getting 3/4 of a turnover. A&M 1.2, so a little bit better, a lot better actually. And on total defense, Missouri's 3rd. They give up 219 yards per game. A&M's 52nd, 330.8. So big difference there. And then total offense, Missouri's 19th. They're getting 472 yards per game and A&M is 71st, 393 yards per game. And also scoring offense, they're only putting up 29 points per game. That's 70th in the nation for A&M. 29th at 36.5 points per game for Missouri. So they got a big advantage there. Texas A&M has the turnover margin advantage, but I'm still going with A&M at home. 12th man, give it to me. Maybe it's just I want Missouri to lose because I don't think they're that good of a team and they don't have a big schedule. I don't know.
Maybe a little biased, but I get it. My
little Big Ten bias.
It's all right. Nothing to be ashamed of.
There we go. Moving right along. All right. This is a bigger game than most would expect. What do you think? Rutgers at Nebraska.
I mean, if these two teams if these two teams were in the SEC, this would be a ranked on ranked matchup. That's what I want to say.
And that's what I believe. But before the season, not a lot of people were calling Rutgers to be this good. I remember we were talking to you about it because me and AJ were like, yo, look at this schedule. They play no one. Absolutely no one. And you weren't sold on Rutgers because, you know, it's Rutgers. But they're chopping wood. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Oregon. They don't play Iowa. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan. But they do play Nebraska, who's had a hell of a season, start off 4-1. The Rule Aids back out again. You know, after that loss to Illinois, we were like, you know what? We got to put the Rule Aid down. But you know what? Bottoms up. I'm drinking the Rule Aid again. It's back. It's staying with me this time. All right. Rutgers does play SC, so they got a schedule there that came out of nowhere because we didn't know that Southern California was going to be as good as they are.
Let me ask you this. Rutgers wins this game. What do you think the odds are of them playing in the Big Ten Championship?
It goes up dramatically.
Yeah, I agree.
Dramatically.
I agree.
Man, yeah, we didn't think – we talked about this. They should be ranked. These teams are comparable to Missouri and A&M, at least I think at this point. Monungai, he is going to have a hell of a running game. He's helped them squeak out wins the last 2 weeks against average teams in Virginia Tech and Washington. And Washington may not even be an average team to me. Speaking about their fifth straight win, the last time Rutgers had 5 wins in a row. That's what they're seeking out right now. 5 wins, starting off 5-0. Back in 2006, when Shiano was there his first time around, was the last time that they were 5-0 to start a season.
I agree. It's I didn't think you were going to get the balanced offense that you've gotten from Rutgers. And I would say, though, I don't go back and say luck, but, Washington has a pretty solid kicker. Kid missed 3 field goals last week. So you got away with one a little bit there. You're not going to get away with one at Nebraska. And I did at times, even though I called him balanced, there were times throughout that game where I thought Rutgers and Washington keyed in on it was very one-dimensional. And to me, the key in this game is going to be whether or not Rutgers and Kaliak Manis can put the ball down the field, push it down the field.
I think you meant Kali Likamaianis.
No.
That's his name for us.
I'm aware. I listened to season 1 of Big Ten Backers. I just, can't get to that level yet. I apologize. But
you
really
like to pronounce names correctly.
I do try to. But I did not see a whole lot of that passing game. And I thought in the second half, they got a little bit tight. I thought when push came to shove, UW pushed the ball down the field pretty well. I know you're not banking on a, even those last seconds with an onside kick and things of that nature. Yeah. But I mean, again, you were another missed field goal away from tying it up to go to overtime. And I remember saying, if they tie this up and go to overtime, UW wins this game. I think their offense is much more efficient than Rutgers. But you know what? You can't coulda, woulda, shoulda, all you want. I'm saying all this to say I really want to see the growth and development of that passing game here at Nebraska. And if Nebraska reduces Rutgers to being a one-dimensional team, I really do see Nebraska being favored here.
Yeah. Turnover margin, Rutgers 31st in the nation. They're getting 0.75. And Nebraska is 18th, 1 turnover a game that they get. But they do turn it over a lot. They just get a lot of turnovers in response to those turnovers. Total defense, Rutgers 69th in the nation, giving up 352.3 yards. They just don't let people score. They're a bend but don't break defense. A lot of that comes from those 3 possessions against Washington that they missed field goals. But Nebraska is 19th in total defense, 274 yards. 0.2 yards per game, 274.2 yards per game. All right, man, what are our picks?
Well, we start off with the lines where it started at -5.5 in favor of Nebraska. You've seen that jump up to -6.5. Over under started at 43.5. that has dropped down to 40. And I think some of the concern with that over-under is probably what you saw last week with Nebraska. I'll admit I didn't watch a ton of that game, just kind of looking at the final score and diving into the numbers. That was a very close game, at least in the first half. So I thought it was very odd that you saw just a modest win against a very, very bad, maybe the worst team in the Bac 10 Purdue team. And so that probably scared that line, forced it to go a little bit under. But just the fact that I think Rutgers does have such a dominant run game. I think they are going to get some points via the run, not too many though. And the fact
take
that
some time off the clock, possession games.
Yeah, but I do think Nebraska can score even again a sluggish first half. They still, covered a spread last week against Purdue. I could see this game being a 7-point win by Nebraska, even a 6 or a 3. I do think Nebraska does win this game. However, I just don't like anything about the spread in a game like this, so I'm actually going over. How about you, Beef?
Let me look at it again. So we got to 6.5.
6.5 currently in favor of Nebraska, and you got an over-under at 40. I do want to let you know with money, too, about 74% of the cash has been flowing to Rutgers over the last 36 hours, and about 61% of the cash flowing to the under. So I'm going against the grain here a little bit.
Yeah, Rutgers is finding a way to win games. Both these teams are pretty pedestrian when it comes to offense. At total offense for Rutgers, 428 yards per game. That is 48th in the nation. And Nebraska is right around the same. They're not very good either. They had 405 yards per game. It's 62nd in the nation. So not really, really good offensive team. So I don't think that they're going to put up a lot of points. Rutgers, finds a way to win games. Like that Virginia Tech game, they just got that interception at the end of the game to seal the deal. Looked like Virginia Tech was going to come back and at least tie it up, if not win it. So they're just one of those teams. They have that it factor, but I'm drinking the Royd. I told you. I'm going with Nebraska, so lay the points. Give me Nebraska.
Yeah, I see it, though. I see it. That 6.5's nice because that touchdown win gets you taken care of.
And at home, man. That place is rowdy.
It's a tough place.
Illinois did it, but Illinois is a surprisingly good team too.
They did. All right.
So moving right along to the next one, son, we got Michigan State going out west, taking on Oregon. Man, oh man. Michigan State did not get too many favors with their schedule this year either. They just played Ohio State, so getting whooped by Ohio State, then traveling out west and going to face maybe the second best team in the Big Ten. Could be the first. Who knows? We'll see in a week, right?
Let's expand upon that a little bit, though.
Yeah, but
at home against Ohio State, on the road against Iowa, or on the road against Oregon, Iowa, at Michigan, at home against number 23 Indiana, on the road against number 24 Illinois. That is their next 6 games.
Dude,
that is brutal.
Yeah, they did not get any favor. And Boston College, they got that road game at Boston College, who is a great team. You said they're 2-2, but they look a lot better than a.
They didn't have their quarterback last week. You gotta brush that off. Castellanos is the real deal. So.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Michigan State still almost beat them.
Yes, 23-19. So it was a close game.
That was a fun game to watch too.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, so brutal schedule. I feel sorry for the Fighting Jonathan Smiths, but they're going to go and get their ass kicked again. All right. Aiden Childs, freshman quarterback, questionable offensive line, and it's led to 8 interceptions on the season, man. He overthrows a lot, and just ouch, another loss. The only hope they have is that Aiden Childs just is on fire. Like I said last week, he would have to be on fire. And Oregon would have to be looking ahead to Ohio State and just taking a game off. But I don't see that. Tez Johnson went off against UCLA, 4 touchdowns, and I see him going off again. I'd love to see him get the ball. He's electric, Yeah,
absolutely.
Johnson, man.
But You talked about this last week when you were talking about that spread on that UCLA game being 23.5. I took Oregon with the spread. And I think your concerns were warranted this year, where you're just not seeing this Oregon team the way we've seen them in previous years, where Oregon took an inferior opponent and they utterly dominated them. That is Oregon's MO. It's been that way for over a decade. They do not play close games against average teams, let alone bad teams. You're not seeing that this year. Again, we talked about the 10-point win against Idaho. Boise State, very good team, maybe a playoff team, but you squeaked that one out on a last-second field goal. You did dominate Oregon State, I'll give you that. But even that UCLA game, you won by 21 points. That is not the Oregon teams we have seen in the past. And I just wonder, is this something – and we've talked about this last year, man. I used to tell you, I don't like that Ohio State team. They're not putting up points. They're not beating teams that they should. You kept telling me, don't worry about it. I was right to be worried. I look at this Oregon team, and I told you at the beginning of the season, they remind me of Ohio State last year, where you're just waiting for them to turn it on, and they may not do it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts around just not seeing what we expected from Dylan Gabriel and this Oregon team?
Well, it's hard. Anytime you have a transfer quarterback coming in and your offensive line has to get shuffled around, it might take some time to put it together. Some teams turn it on at the end. Some teams don't. I mean, you got to peak at the right time, and they need to peak now, right? Because next week, both these teams, it's going to be a heavyweight clash. But we'll get back to MSU, man. Michigan State, turnover margin, 126 in the nation out of 133 teams. They are negative 1.4 points per game. And I think we might have we got our Oregon dude just in time. Here we go. What's up, Scott?
Oh, man, I literally just got to town 15 minutes ago, and I had to run to the store first. So I'm like
hey,
pushing
man,
the time
limit.
limits.
Timing. You got on here like right.
We didn't even time it that way. I like it.
So we were just talking about a little bit, I don't know if you heard any of it, but we were talking about how this Oregon team kind of reminds us of Ohio State last year. At least Vegas thinks, Ohio State didn't really turn it on against the inferior teams a lot of times, and he just wanted to see more of them, was a little worried about them. I said, some teams gel, some teams get better as time goes on, like a fine wine, they get better with age. What do you think about this Oregon team? Are they ready to go against the big dogs next week?
I'm not sure, and we joke actually around our boards because this team looks a lot more like Washington last year too. Just kept clawing by, barely beating Arizona State, barely beating Arizona, barely beating Washington State. Mm-hmm. There were 5 games that they could have lost last year that they won. So to me, that's actually what we see is a lot of similarities in games they should blow people out and they're not. Oregon has only covered the spread once this year, and that was against Oregon State. Every other game they've not been able to cover the spread. I need to see tomorrow. Obviously, this, I think, will be the second best team Oregon has played. I can't say best until I see it in person. Right now, Boise State is still the best team I've seen them play this year. Mm-hmm. So I don't know yet if they're ready. I need to see tomorrow what they do with a defense that's probably going to be more physical than the Boise State defense was. Definitely more physical than Oregon State and Idaho and UCLA. And so I want to see what this offense does against a physical defense that will be forcing them to do stuff that they're not comfortable doing. Oregon hasn't run the ball great this year outside of Jordan James. He's averaging 6 yards a carry. Noah Whittington's averaging 2.6. It's, there's a big drop off in production from Jordan James to the backups. So I want to see what they do tomorrow. I want to see if they're able to slow down the pass rush. I know Michigan State's pass rush, some of it's against Prairie View A&M, but I want to see if they can slow down a pass rush against a better team. And see how they perform in that bright lights on a Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night games, man. I'm loving it. Love Friday night games. You get to spend a little bit more time watching the team, rewinding, going back, checking out plays, and dissecting the game just a little bit more than you would, when they're buried between 40 other games that you really want to watch. We just talked about it. Michigan State is abysmal in turnover margin per game, negative 1.4. So they're giving away almost 1.5 times more than they take as far as turnovers. 126th in the nation. That is almost the very bottom of the barrel.
And Oregon has not been great at forcing turnovers. They've got 4 interceptions, but no fumbles recovered this year. So
and
not a
zero, their turnover margin per game. So it's
Yeah.
Average, 66th in the nation.
Yeah, so I that's going to be an interesting thing. I know Aiden Childs has struggled. I think he's thrown 8 interceptions against a good passing defense, which Oregon does have a good passing defense. That could be the key matchup right there. Is if he can't throw the ball against Oregon, it's going to be a long day for Michigan State, because Oregon's going to do what they do to stop the run and force them to throw the ball. I think I said last night on a different podcast that if Michigan State wants to try to take advantage of Oregon's weakness on defense, they got to get Aiden Childs out in space and get him to run. That is an area Oregon has struggled with historically, and I didn't see a lot of greatness early in the season defending mobile quarterbacks. So I want to see if they can get Aiden Childs out to the edge, they can have some success offensively. If they can't, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah.
I am curious about that, because last week, Beav and I watched Ohio State play Michigan State. I really didn't see him getting out of the pocket. And I'll tell you right now, Ohio State's pretty bad against rushing quarterbacks as well. So I'm curious, as your time kind of watching Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, was he good about getting those quarterbacks out, rolling them out, design runs, putting his quarterbacks in the middle? Okay.
No, that was he liked pocket quarterbacks that throw the ball. He wants to focus on really heavy run, and he wants it to be a real physical running team. That's how he beat Oregon in 2022. At the end of the game, they ran it like 18 straight times without a single pass over the entire last half of the third quarter and fourth quarter. They just didn't throw a pass. That was partly because their starting quarterback was out. But no, they weren't a big, huge spread option type team. They would do more with motion guys out of the back, fly sweeps. They would do more of that kind of stuff with receivers and running backs than trying to get the quarterback to the edge.
And that's kind of what, you got to play to what you have, especially in the college game. Like, you can recruit to it, but what he has right now is different than, an in-the-pocket passer and a rushing offense. Like, let the boy run, man. He is electric when he's got the ball in his hands. Moving within the pocket, I've seen him multiple times just running around, escaping, sacks. His offensive line isn't really that good, so you got to let the boy move.
Mm-hmm. You got to let him get out and do what he does. Now, he makes some bad decisions throwing the ball when he's on the move. Mm-hmm. But, if he understands when it's time to tuck it and run, he could do some things that force other teams to say, hey, we got to do something different, because we can't let this guy eat up yards on the edge on the run. So we've got to put a spy on him. And as soon as you do something like that, then you open up some things that wouldn't have otherwise been open. Maybe he's going to do that now. I don't know. Jonathan Smith has never been a big, huge, I'm going to do something different than I've ever done it before. Yeah. But it's winning games. And you do what you have to do to win games.
For sure. All right. Well, we're going to get into the bets on this one. You got anything else you want to cover, or you want to talk about with the future lineup with Ohio State coming next week?
Man, I want to talk next week about what it looks like after I see this. I want to see what this looks like tomorrow, and I think then we can really dig into it and really talk about the matchup next week, because that's going to be, it should be the biggest game of the week. I know the Red River rivalry is next Saturday also, but that doesn't have the luster of a top 5 matchup that this will have.
No, you can be biased, man. It's Ohio State, Oregon next week. That's the biggest game.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
You can be biased. It's fine.
And I think Texas is going to just blow out Oklahoma anyway.
Yeah.
Texas is a much better team, in my opinion, right now.
They are. And I don't see that being close, and I don't see any reason why every eyeball in America shouldn't be on the Ohio State-Oregon game.
It will.
For sure. Yeah, and maybe we're both biased, or all three of us are biased.
A little bias is okay now and then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
But let's dive into
money lines.
Yeah, we can get into them. So the line started minus 26.5 in favor of Oregon. You've seen that drop to minus 23.5. Over-under stayed pretty consistent at 52.5 currently. However, the interesting thing, in my opinion, is the money. Over the last 36 hours, you've seen about 64% of the cash flowing to Michigan State on the spread. 95% of the cash over the last 36 hours flowing to the over. I think that's really surprising to me. I typically look at Oregon and I just naturally pick over. That's where my mind always goes with Oregon.
Right.
However, I will say I really like what I heard here, because I thought Michigan State, they played a pretty good first half against Ohio State, but turnovers were a big issue. Childs was not getting out of the pocket. He was not mobile. Ohio State was keeping them contained, and eventually they won by 31 points. So my first play here, I think Oregon does win. I think they win convincingly, but I actually like the under here, just given I haven't really seen that Oregon offense clicking yet. However, I do like that. I do like laying the points with Oregon as well. I just don't think Michigan State has the resources and what they need, and I think Oregon State winning by 24-28 is not unrealistic. How about you, Beef?
Well, with the turnover margin, being one of the last in the nation, and their offense being 86th in the nation, 369.8 yards per game, scoring offense is 104th in the nation, 21.8 points per game. I think that Oregon's going to be able to have their way with them. I know Michigan's played some competition, but let me see what that. Man, these are tough. This is why betting's tough, man. I got to get this right.
It's why we do this segment, buddy.
I know I got to get this right, though. I mean, I need to take the lead back on you. So, what did you go with?
I went with the under.
You went with the
but
under.
I do like the Oregon spread. That would be a second pick I'd really be looking at, especially if you've seen that line keep dropping. I do like it.
But Oregon hasn't covered yet this year, huh?
I don't know that.
They covered Oregon State. They covered Oregon State.
They're 1-3.
Yeah,
they're 1-3 against the spread this year. Oregon is. My apologies.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go ahead and go with the over. I'm going to go with the money.
All right. You're going to go with the money. All right.
I went over as well. Only because Friday night after dark, it's stuff happens, and I think you're going to see some points. And the Oregon offense did click against UCLA for the first half. They just shut it down. That second half was a grind it out. Let's get out of here with the win and not worry about anything else, because they were rolling in the first half. 4 straight touchdowns. I think at one point they had scored on 14 consecutive drives going back to Boise State. So they were clicking for a while, and then they just shut it down. Said, we've got this. We're not going to risk any injuries.
Out of Dan Lanning in the past is just like, let's go. Let's just shut it down. Let's take the time off the clock and get out of here.
That's new this year. That is new this year. He hasn't really, when he's had teams on the ropes like that in the past, he's gone ahead and let it keep rolling. And that's something different this year. I don't know if it's load management or if they just felt like, hey, there's a lot of hostility happening on that field, and there was a lot of chippiness on Saturday night against UCLA. Maybe he just thought, we're not going to risk it. We're just going to get out of here and take the win. I'm not sure. He won't talk about it, but
yeah.
Can he cover the spread and then shut it down? Can you put in a word for him on that?
I'm going to call him and say, hey,
25.5.
Come on, Dan, cover the spread.
Cover the spread, then shut it down. That's what you do in college football. Come on, man. Yes.
I'll try. I don't know if I can get him to go along with that.
Yeah, I don't think that would go over well. I get it.
He might say something about Pete Rose, and then I'll get all upset, and I don't want to do that.
As long as he's not betting on Oregon, he has nothing to worry about. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Right. I got you down for the over, buddy. Yep.
All right.
Well, hey, we got a couple more former Pac-12 teams. So you want to stick on with us with USC and Washington's games?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Coming up next, SC at Minnesota. And Minnesota gave a scary game to Michigan. Michigan was blowing them out, and all of a sudden Minnesota's like, yep, we're getting back on board. And SC had to overcome against Wisconsin, the Badgers, man. 21-7, I think it was at halftime.
It was 21-7 or 21-10.
They might have got the field goal in before half. I can't remember if they got it in before half.
It was 21-10. 21-10.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because they scored 28 straight or something like that after that.
It was 31 unanswered points because they did have 21-7 at one point.
Right.
I can't remember. They did get a field goal. I think it was before half, though. You're right.
And that's how you cover the spread, USC. Yes. Thank you very much.
Pull away in the second half.
Yes.
Well, man, at this game, yeah, Minnesota kind of succumbed to the Wolverines' warts, and they were tempted the entire first half, but they resisted. They came back, and at the end, Minnesota just barely lost that game. You know, there was the onside kick dilemma, and like we talked about, USC managed that comeback win on their own against Wisconsin, which I didn't see happening, man. I remember seeing that score, and I was like, wow, all right, USC might lose this game. They can't take a half off in this game against Minnesota because Minnesota is a decent team, but Minnesota also can't afford to take a half off like they did against Michigan last week. They give up less than 100 yards passing per game by the Gophers. So that's first in the nation, but they have not played anyone with a pulse passing. I mean, piss poor passing teams. Michigan doesn't even really try to attempt to pass. They're 129th in the nation in passing offense. And Iowa also, they're about the same. They don't really like to pass. They like to feed the rush, man. Woody Marks is going to have to step it up because Minnesota does have a little bit of a susceptible rushing game. So their rushing defense isn't great. So we'll see the kind of this matchup. Miller Moss averages about 300 yards passing, leads the Big Ten in passing per game. So you think Miller Moss is going to be able to pass against this defense at Minnesota? Minnesota's actually a little bit of a tough place to play.
Again, you talking to Vikings or Gophers this year? I keep getting confused.
No, I mean, they actually have a decent crowd, and they can get into the game. Like, if you give them a chance, their crowd can get into the game. I've been there a couple times to watch Ohio State play the Gophers.
I know. You're the Big Ten backers. I'm just the money Vegas guy, right? So I can poke fun. I would call that a fluky fourth quarter, to be honest with you. Michigan was favored 10.5. I turned it off when it was 24-3, and I'm like, easy cover. I'm going to go do yard work. Was blown away when I saw that score at the end there. I really don't think Michigan has the same offense as USC. I understand Michigan won there, but I think USC with a little bit more of a prolific offense, I think really lays it to them. I'm just not seeing anything that lets me lay my hat on Minnesota. They do a lot of things okay, but nothing spectacular, nothing that's really going to keep you in the game. And I think Michigan being one-dimensional, you're going to see that hurt them more times than help them here in the second half of this season. I like what USC has been doing all season long. I really see them rolling here against Minnesota. I don't have much else, but
yeah, I watched the second half of Michigan, Minnesota, and I agree. It was kind of fluky. I don't know that Minnesota really has an offense that's capable of keeping up with the SC offense. Now, SC can't wait until the second half to turn it on again. They've done that 2 weeks in a row. The first week they lost. The second week they won. Thankfully, Wisconsin's quarterback is, not a good quarterback for them. I like SC in this one. I don't know the numbers on this one, but
it's 7.5 currently.
I'd pick that. I'd go over that. I'd go with the spread on that. And I only say that because I think there's too many athletes on the outside for SC that Minnesota, I don't think they're going to be able to stop all those different receivers, the running backs, Miller Moss. There's just a lot of offense that I think SC can do. And I think their defense will be good enough to make that, a 14-point type game.
I agree.
Yeah, 32nd in the nation in yards, 304.8 yards per game. And they did have a couple of good games, like they played LSU. So they played some tougher teams. It hasn't been a cakewalk of a schedule yet. So their defense has definitely improved from last year. Everyone's been, talking about it. They pulled their rival's defensive coordinator, and that's awesome in and of itself.
They did. And he had a good defense last year.
Yes,
absolutely. And Minnesota is just they're a tricky team to pick against too, because they have enough to kind of give you a game, but you could overlook them very easily, and that's probably what Michigan did last week when they got ahead big and they were like, you know what, we can relax a little bit mentally. They just weren't with it in the second half, and a turnover can always be the great equalizer. And that depends on what happens in this game. I mean, if USC gives some turnovers, Minnesota's 0.8, so they're 24th in the nation. They get almost a turnover plus turnover a game. I don't see them keeping up with USC either. USC's destined to be a good team, maybe not a great team, but they have a shot at the playoffs, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna go with the under though.
You're gonna go with the under? You haven't even heard the under.
It's 49.
All right, I forgot.
I'm looking at it.
I know. I sent you a tweet, man. I forgot. that you're just shooting from the hip. I got to go with Scott. I just don't see this being a competitive game. I think USC rolls here. I see them winning comfortably, 18 points. I don't see it. So USC lay the points.
USC lay the points. All right. We got the title game to go over. The title game from last year. This time it's being played on the West Coast. Michigan versus the Huskies, man. Michigan, number 10 in the nation, 4-1. Washington now 3-2, man. 1-1 in the Big Ten. Kind of a disappointing season, but it's a completely different team, really, for both teams.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Vegas? You've seen Washington, you've seen the Huskies play a couple times.
Yeah. And I will be at attendance for this game too. Sorry, Scott, but I got to be a diehard Huskies fan this weekend. Enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I will be wearing purple for sure. I look at Michigan State and I look at Michigan, my apologies. And I just say being a one-dimensional team is going to catch up to you eventually. You just cannot continually be a one-dimensional team, whether it's passing or running, and really be successful throughout. You have a much better chance at the passing side than the rushing side of this. Washington just they don't have the athletes. They just don't have the athletes to play at the level they were playing at last year. I think they can be competitive. I think there are times they can move the ball down the field. I think their defense is still pretty good. Bruner at linebacker, a couple other pieces. I think they can bow up and be stout when they want to. I just have not seen that consistency on the offensive side of the ball that wants me to take Washington seriously. However, I look at the fact that I think Washington can play a very good defensive game. And I think if you can force Michigan to truly be one-dimensional, keep Orji in the pocket, keep Edwards contained, I'm seeing why people are favoring this, and I do just want to jump right out in front of this. When this line opened, it was -9 in favor of Michigan. Most books' consensus as of earlier today have the line now -2 in favor of Washington. An 11.5 point swing on that. So, I look at this and I say, okay, Washington, keys to winning the game. You absolutely must shut down the run. You must keep Orji contained. But the offensive side of the ball has really got to get it clicking. And I think if you see that sluggish offense, I really see Michigan coming out with a win here. What are your all's thoughts?
Well, they were outgaining Rutgers last week, 222 yards, but they didn't have any interceptions. They had 0 sacks. You talked about the 3 missed field goals, and that has only happened 3 times in the last 100 years. This team is a team that knows how to lose close games. They did it against their rival in Washington State, against those Cougars, and they did it last week against Rutgers. Michigan's not a great team, and like you talked about, their identity is run, hard-nosed football. They're not going to pass the ball. They just don't want to. But I think Washington will just lose against teams that can physically outmatch them, and I think Michigan can physically outmatch them. Washington's 51st in rush defense in the nation. They allow 121 yards per game, and Michigan's going to top that this week.
Yep.
And the other thing to think about for me is Washington is awful in the red zone on offense. They're awful. And I don't care how you want to spin it. They're not good in the red zone. And if you can't score when you get in the red zone, it doesn't matter how many yards you get between the 20s. If you're settling for field goals, maybe that works against a Michigan. I don't think it works long run, and I think that's going to create some problems because Michigan is going to be better able to make stops to not even let them in the red zone to even get into field goal range at times. If it's me, what's the over-under?
You're looking at 41.5. It's gone up.
I'm going under.
Yeah.
I see it.
I just don't see a lot of offense here.
The scoring offense for Washington or for Michigan is 92nd with 24.8 points per game, and for Washington it's 89th at 25.2. So they're both right around 25. And what did you say that over under was again? Right here it is 41.5. I think I'm going to have to go the under too.
Wow. All right.
Both teams have good rushing rushers, really. I mean, they got Coleman for the Huskies. And they have the double-headed monster there for the Wolverines. So they can
the tough part is
possession.
I can't pick a winner when it's a 2.5-point spread because that means it's a field goal. Anything happens in a to me that's almost a pick 'em at that point. And Washington scored 18 points against Rutgers. They scored 24 against Washington State. There's not a lot of offense there, and I just don't. In Michigan, I don't think they can throw the ball. If they can, I'd be shocked if they had 150 yards passing. That would be a good game for Alex Orji, I think. So I just like the under. I think it's a good bet.
Yeah, I think Alex Orji had 32 yards passing in his first game, and he more than doubled it. I think he had 86 last game. So he's pushing. He's getting better. As long as you double it every time, that's pretty good.
He's almost to 150 for his career, so that's good.
All right, man. Well, we're going to let you go. Thanks for joining us again, Scott. It's always a pleasure. Love having you on. You get to watch a game tomorrow, man, live. That's going to be fun.
I do. And, then on Saturday I get to drive home and do a bunch of work. So,
that's all.
Hey, but
man,
we'll talk.
At least you have the time to do it, like on Saturday.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. Hey, we'll talk next week, though, because I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, we definitely have to talk next week. That's going to be a big-time game, a big-time podcast. We've been looking forward to this all off season.
I may not sleep all week, but it'll be worth it.
Absolutely. All right, man.
All right, guys.
Pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
All right, talk to you guys later.
All right, it's time to get things spicy. We got to pay some bills, brother. We haven't done that for a while, man. I'm always bad about paying bills. We need to add them on here. AJ,
pay your bills,
where
man.
you at, man? Get it spicy for us.
Yum, get you some. Yum, get you some. Yum, get you some. Yum, get you some.
Dano Seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa.
Joe,
hey.
We all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum.
Yum, get you some.
Yum, get you some.
Gotta pay them bills, man.
We need to get going to the next game. All right, man. More Big Ten games coming at you after this. We got Ole Miss at South Carolina, man. This is a game, we talked about it earlier. You do not like Ole Miss. You didn't like them from the start of the season. You weren't on that lane train. Well, you know what? I think South Carolina's going to knock them off one more time. 2 losses in a row, man. I see it coming.
Oh, very much could see it coming. Again, I don't take Lane Kiffin seriously. Go back to the tapes last year. I was saying the same thing. I'll say it again this year. He just cannot put together a complete season, complete balanced game. He trips himself up all too often. I very much see South Carolina. They're a pretty competitive team this year. The record may not show it at the end of the season, but I think they're going to play a tough SEC slate. And just diving into the numbers super fast, you're seeing that line drop from -7.5 in favor of Ole Miss down to -9. So about 69% of the cash in favor of the Gamecocks. You're seeing the public feel that way as well. You're seeing the over-under creep up to 53.5. And to your point, I just don't know what you're going to get out of this Ole Miss team. Everyone tells me offense is going to be prolific. They're going to do all these things. And then you lose at home to Kentucky. You cannot do that if you're going to be a playoff team and taken really seriously. So I would say take those points. Give me the Gamecocks. I'm jumping right in. How about you?
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. South Carolina's 14th in the nation in yards scoring. Total defense, 264.8 yards per game. They faced a tough defense last week against Kentucky and got knocked off. I think it's going to happen when they travel on the road again. Ole Miss is 6-1 against the spread on the road, so they've been doing good in the past, but I just don't see it happening this year. Their offensive line is weak. South Carolina, those Cox, they have a tough freshman at defensive end. He's doing work, man. One of the best freshmen in the nation right now, along with the receivers that everyone knows at Alabama and at Ohio State, and Dylan Raiola up there as a top freshman in the nation as well. So I got South Carolina. Give me them Cox. I'm with you.
I like it.
That's a lock.
No, it's not. But we'll take it.
You're not taking? Oh,
No, I'm taking South Carolina. I'm just not calling for any locks. This is a betting segment, so there are no locks.
I just meant me and you locking it up.
Fair enough, man.
Here
So
we go, moving right along. What do we want to get to next? A little bit more Big Ten? You down for that?
you're driving the bus, man. I'm
All
just
right,
in
boom.
shotgun. You go where you want to go.
All right. Break out that pack of Signettis, baby. Here we are. 5-0. Man, first time since 1964 going for 6-0. This is just shocking to everyone, to the world. But he called it, man. He is cashing checks and he's got receipts. Man, oh man, this is impressive. I love it. And this is just an easy game for them, I think, going to Northwestern. Northwestern at 2-2, they're not the team that they were last year when they kind of got the pieces together and won. I think they won 4 or 5 games in a row. They were going back and forth, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, and Northwestern just seemed to pull it out. Not this year. Northwestern's a terrible team. Indiana all the way. They are scoring at will. They haven't played a lot of great teams, but when they play even a little bit of competition like Maryland, they stomped them, man. They put the pedal to the metal and got it done.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head here. This is really about one of the weakest schedules so far in FBS.
Mm-hmm.
I think we look back last year to that Maryland team that was competitive, right? I mean, you self-proclaimed how they were going to knock off one of the big 3 in the Big Ten East. How'd that prediction go, by the way? But Maryland was competitive. They were pretty good teams. I think you jumped ahead a little on that one.
That's what's coming up next.
I know. But, I think with this Indiana squad, they have not played any competition whatsoever. I think they are riding high. I think they're doing what they need to do. They're winning against inferior opponents, but I really just don't see anything out of UCLA or Maryland. They're probably going to be in the bottom quartile of the Big Ten when it's all said and done. I do like their odds against Northwestern, but really going down the stretch, what you do against Nebraska, Washington, Michigan, Ohio State, if those games are really tight, okay, I'll start buying into this. Right now, I am absolutely not bought in at all. However, with that being said, you got that spread at minus 13.5 that's risen 3 points this week. Got an over-under around 41.5. I'm laying the points. Give me the Hoosiers just because they are taking care of business against inferior opponents. How about you?
Yep. I'm with you. Lay the points. Give me Indiana. Give me the Signettis. Give me that pack of Signettis right now. I need it. All right. Now we can get into what I so kindly jumped ahead to. Woke versus choke. There is definitely going to be a protest before this game out in Berkeley, California.
I don't think that says choke.
Oh. What does it say? Something that they do in Vegas?
Yeah.
That's all around. I
I wouldn't
you're
know
not partaking in this.
No, mine are business trips, man. What are you talking about? No, I mean, it doesn't have the same ring as Catholics versus convicts, right? But, it rhymes. It's close. I get it.
Woke versus coke, man.
I mean, you could use choke, right? I mean, when you failed to take a knee and lose to Georgia Tech on a fumble, that checks out. Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to bring drugs in the podcast, but I guess if we're making fun of
this is a clean show, ladies and gentlemen. We don't do that.
Fair game.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. We'll get into the numbers here. I want to hear about it.
Man, I don't think Miami's going to lose this game. Cal's got a good defense. I just think this is one of those games that you kind of watch out for. It's one of those things where you watch the first half, first couple possessions, then you go out and do your yard work, but you check back at halftime just to see what that score is. Then maybe if it's close, check back again towards the end of the third quarter, and then you need to start watching if it's still close, because I think this is a game that could possibly be an upset. I wouldn't pick it. I wouldn't bet on it. I think that's a terrible decision, but just wanted to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And I'm usually pretty clear. Yeah.
As far as scoring, Miami is second in the nation, 49.4 points per game. So, woo, buddy. They're up there with everything. Turnover margin, they're 24th in the nation at 0.8. Cal actually is third in the nation at positive 2 turnovers per game. So, if they get those turnovers, 2 turnovers in a game, like I said, I say it all the time, turnovers are the great equalizers. So, get 2 or more turnovers in this game, and they got a chance.
I mean, you could probably say that about 90% of games. I think Cal, when you look at who they played this year, it is a name recognition only schedule. And I say that because they went to Auburn. They won by 7. Auburn is terrible this year. They played San Diego State. San Diego State has been a hyper-competitive Mountain West team for a while. They're terrible this year. They won that game. They traveled to Florida State. Yes, they lost 14-9. Florida State's a train wreck this year. So I think a lot of the focus and a lot of the hype has been around, wow, Cal's played some really good teams this year, keeping it competitive 3-1. If you really dig deep, they haven't. Miami, I think they stumbled a little bit last week against Virginia Tech. Just quick, I want to know, was it a catch last week or not?
It was a catch.
It was a catch. And argued with people on this, there was nothing to overturn that call on the field. If the call on the field was incomplete, should have been incomplete.
Absolutely.
The call on the field was a touchdown. There was nothing to overturn that call. That was the ACC saying, hey, we need to have one team that's viable here. Overturn the call.
We gotta protect our boss. Yeah.
Sorry, I just needed needed that opinion from yours. I needed to hear it. But I think with that being said, I just if this was a first time ever college game day experience, right, at Cal, if this was a hostile crowd, if this was an amped up crowd, let's just say a Northwestern or somebody that actually cares about football, maybe doesn't get a lot of recognition, you get a lot of fans in there, it's really pumped up. I could see the home field being an advantage here. It's Cal Berkeley. They're going to be at the library. They're going to be at
they're going to protest game day and not come.
They probably will, but they're too busy, they're at the coffee shop. They're doing 40,000 other things. There is no home field advantage here. As much as I want to say that wasn't a catch last week, Miami's got a pretty high-powered offense. They're doing what they need to do to win games. This line being at minus 10.5, I think that's a little bit overhyped with the college game day and all that stuff. You got an over-under at 53.5 that's dropped a couple points. I will say Cal does have a pretty good defense. I'd probably stay away from that over-under because of that defense. However, lay the points, give me the Hurricanes, don't look twice. How about you?
I'm with you. Lay the points. I just think that this is a possibility. It's something where they could overlook this game. They just had a tight game last week. They're traveling across country. My money is going to go on Miami, but I could see that happening where it could be a closer game than what everyone would think, or what all the experts think. But it is time for the rapid fire. Let's get to them quickies, baby. Here we go. Let's start with Penn State going out west. UCLA visiting Penn State. This is the end of their gauntlet of a schedule. They had at LSU, Oregon at home, then at Penn State. Man, that is back to back to back ass whoopings.
Yeah, it's been a tough road.
And they actually played pretty good against two of them. I mean, decently. Compared to how they've been, the only win they have on the season is Hawaii. Let's get into those numbers.
Yeah, but that's at Hawaii. You can't dismiss that. It's not an easy place to play. But really, it's funny. The only game they weren't in at all was against Indiana, who I just bashed 5 minutes ago. They were competitive against LSU. We heard from Scott again, tale of the final score versus the reality of the situation. Jonas Landing's taking his foot off the gas. When in the world Oregon took their foot off the gas, I have no idea. As a program, I mean, they never took their foot off the gas as a program. But getting into the numbers, you're seeing the line at minus 27.5 in favor of Penn State and over under a 46.5. I would play the under here. I just think Penn State is not as prolific on offense as you would like. UCLA is incredibly sluggish, does have a pretty good defense. Penn State's defense is a lead, in my opinion. So I don't see a ton of points here, and I just don't see Penn State having the juice to cover 28 points, 4-touchdown win.
Yeah, I mean, unless Singleton has a hell of a game, breaks some long runs for touchdowns, I don't see it either. Drew Aller is having a good year, but they don't have the receiving weapons to really stretch the field against anyone, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with the under 2. I kind of like that. I love it, actually. All right, Carter Kane, as an Ole Miss fan, I really think Ole Miss could be a fraud. Wow.
I think he's right.
I think it's the offensive line really for Ole Miss more than anything that has me skeptical about that Ole Miss team. The Rebels, man.
They just
Hey,
never
before
bring
we
it
get
together. I think it's Lane Kiffin, man. I don't think he
Yeah.
can ever bring a team together for an entire season. I just don't.
Yeah, and to me, it's really that offensive mind where he doesn't focus enough on the defense. He's really just run and gun, and that he focuses the attention really just on that offense, and it's prolific. He does well with it. But when you get against a physically matched team, you got to have that defense. You know, Riley's had the same problem at USC.
Oh, yeah.
He's got that fixed now. Ryan Day had the same problem at Ohio State where it was just about the offense, not about the defense. Took a couple years. Got that fixed now, too. So he's just got to get a good defensive coordinator in there, I think. But, hey, we got to give the college football dogs some love, so we're going to play their commercial. They put this on for us, so, hey, college football dogs, man, we're part of their network. We love that network, and here they are, baby.
On the College Football Dogs website, you'll find a main page that features some of our biggest and newest stories. Our conference pages for content related to your favorite team's conference. Our team store, where we have products that are available all year long, as well as gear available for a limited time only. Our podcast page, where you can see when one of the 12-plus College Football Dogs podcasts is streaming live on social media. Our subscription page, where you can join our Discord. If you're interested in becoming a contributor at College Football Dogs, email us at info@collegefootballdogs.com. If you enjoy any College Football Dogs content, we really do appreciate any donations you can make by visiting the donate page on our website or scanning the QR code here.
College Football Dogs, for the fans.
Where'd you go?
Oh, man, we are back. Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. All right, let's flip that script, man.
Here we
Let's
go. Just a couple more games to go. What do you want to start with? Who we got here?
Oh, let's finish up the Big Ten slate, man. Come on.
Finish up the Big Ten slate. We have Purdue and Wisconsin. Let's get to that. Boom.
Yeah. So you're seeing an over-under at 13.5 in favor of Wisconsin and a spread at minus 13.5 in favor of Wisconsin, and over-under that has dropped to 45. Seeing about 50-50 on the cash flow right now with the spread. So you're seeing a public that's not really sure what they're going to go here. I would tell everybody this is one of those flat-out stay away from games. You think Wisconsin, at least on paper, should be able to take care of Purdue, but if you look at Wisconsin's body of work, even beating terrible teams by 14 points has been a challenge. I like nothing about that spread. I would stay away from it. However, for entertainment purposes only here, I'm taking the under. How about you?
Man, wait, is that 13.5?
Yeah. Don't look at your spreadsheet, man. It's Wisconsin minus 13.5. I put them in the wrong box.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness. Wow.
that's my
All
fault.
right.
My bad.
Good. I was
Yep.
like, man, that is awful. Wisconsin 2-2, 0-1 in the Big Ten. Purdue 1-3, 0-1 in the Big Ten. I like Wisconsin, but I don't think that they can win by 13.5. So I'm going to go with Purdue.
Wow, risky. Taking Purdue this year on anything. All right.
All right, I think that covers the Big Ten slate. I got through it all, didn't I? There we
Yes,
go.
we did. We got one more in the desert, man.
In the desert. I don't think I have a graphic for that one, so let's just get right into it. All right.
Roll, man. Yeah, we got a 3-1 Syracuse traveling out to Las Vegas to take on the 4-0 UNLV Running Rebels. You're seeing a spread of minus 6.5 in favor of UNLV. That's up 2.5 points on the week, and an over/under at 58.5. That's up 1 point. About 75% of the cash, though, recently in the last 36 hours flowing in favor of Syracuse. So you're probably going to see that line drop a little bit. 95% of the cash in favor of the over. I definitely understand where that's coming from, though, but I'll keep it simple. Lay the points. Give me UNLV. How about you?
I'm going with the under.
The under.
Yes, sir.
Is this the McCord of last year? Is that where you're bearish?
For some picks, and And
No,
UNLV
no.
doesn't go.
He doesn't throw picks. What are you talking about?
All right, let's get into it. The Burns Win UP. You like to give it the abbreviation. I like to get graphic. These games are so bad that they make you burn Win UP. If you have to pick one like this, man, what do we got? I know you like to hide these ones from me, so surprise me.
I do. And as we heard from comments from people throughout the week, yes, we ran a little late last week. We did miss this game last week, so I want to apologize to everyone out there. So you are 2-2 on the season. I do want to let you know that, just so you're aware. But I think I got a pretty good one for you this week. So we got the Gamecocks of Jacksonville State at 1-3, traveling to the Owls of Kennesaw State. And just so everyone's aware, we don't pick FCS teams in this. Kennesaw State, first year in the FBS, they are 0-4. Maybe should have stayed in the FCS. We are seeing a line at -16.5 in favor of the Fighting Rich Rods of Jacksonville State, and an over-under at 49.5. I will give you a little bit of a taste of something just to put a twist on it. Jacksonville State is -16.5. However, 96% of the cash over the last 36 hours going to Kennesaw State. First question, where's Kennesaw State?
Kennesaw State is in Georgia.
All right, good for you, man. Second question, where are you going with this?
I am going with, I got to do it over or under because I don't trust that 16.5 points. I do not like to pick for a winless team, so I'm going to go with the under.
Under at 49. All right. You are 2-2 on the season, man. So
let's take it. All right. We went a little long again, so we got to wrap this up. Big Ten backers are out. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Vegas, for joining us. And thank you for all of you guys. Follow us, like, share, subscribe. Check our shit out. You'll love it. Share it. Comment, do what you will, write us a review. We are on everywhere where you can download a podcast. We are on YouTube, we are on X, we're on Facebook, all right? Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you'd like. Whatever your frame of mind is, take us there, or follow us everywhere, even better. Big Ten backers are out. God bless.